Greetings. Welcome back to Invitations to World Religions, Chapter 5. We're looking at Buddhism this time around. Buddhism was developed in India about 2,500 years ago by a man named Siddhartha Gautama. He became known as the Buddha, which means the Enlightened One. And there are now over 500 million Buddhists. Most of them live in countries east of India, but the religion has spread to Europe, the United States of America, Australia, and New Zealand. In this chapter, we want to understand the teachings of Buddha, obviously, understand the essential features of Buddhist traditions and schools, understand the most important features in the history of Buddhism, and understand the significance of Buddhist practices. First, let's look at the teachings of Buddhism. The foundation of the teaching of Buddha is the doctrine of interdependent origination, according to which all things are interrelated and dependent upon other things for their coming into existence and continued existence. As a matter of fact, no thing, in fact, has existence or identity that distinguishes it from all other things. So the Buddha also taught that all things are impermanent. Nothing remains the same, even for a moment. Instead, all things are always in a kind of a state of becoming. And these teachings have two important implications. The first is that because we human beings are part of a vast web of interrelated things, we have no independent existence as a being self-separate from other things. The second is that suffering will arise whenever we vainly try to grasp or control anything the so-called self in a world that, because it is constantly changing, cannot be grasped. And those who wish to put an end to suffering must learn to live without attachment to things, letting go of desire for and attachment to things that cannot be possessed, brings an end to suffering and ultimately the bliss of nirvana. Three great traditions within Buddhism elaborate on the Buddhist teaching, each in its own way. The Theravada tradition emphasizes monasticism and makes a hero of the Arhat. That's the person who has attained enlightenment. The spiritual hero in Mahayana Buddhism is the Bodhisattva, or the Enlightened One, who vows to aid all things, all beings, in their quest for enlightenment. Mahayana understands the historical Buddha as an earthly expression of the Dharma, and teaches a complex cosmology. Vajrayana Buddhism, which is Tantric Buddhism within the Mahayana tradition, that embraces basic Mahayana beliefs, but it's distinctive in its emphasis on tantric teachings and rituals. The history of Buddhism. Soon after the death of Buddha, his monks organized the first Buddhist council in 405 BC for the purpose of preserving his teachings. And it was followed by several additional councils, all of which served to establish the Buddhist tradition. For a time, Buddhism thrived in India, and especially during the 3rd century BC, with the support of King Ashoka. But during Ashoka's reign, Buddhism became an imperial religion that started receiving state support. Ashoka sponsored missionary efforts that brought Buddhism to southern India, Sri Lanka, and Southeast Asia. So by 400 AD, it had arrived in China and Korea, and it continued to spread throughout Asia, though in India, its influence began to wane in the 8th century with the emergence of some of your Hindu devotional cults, which proved to be more popular. Buddhism was largely unknown in the West until the 19th century, and at that juncture, it assumed a presence in America in 1893 at the World Parliament of Religions in Chicago, and it was attended by religious leaders from around the world. Another factor that promoted Buddhism in America was the immigration of Asian Buddhists. So Buddhism as a way of life. Buddhism and Buddhists identify themselves as such by reciting the 3 refuges. The first one is, I take refuge in the Buddha. The second, I take refuge in the Dharma. And then lastly, thirdly, I take refuge in the Sangha. So in doing so, they testify to their commitment to Buddha and his teachings and their reliance on the community of monastic monks and nuns. So Buddhists also embrace the 5 precepts: prohibitions of killing, stealing, sexual immorality, lying, and the use of intoxicants. So another basic feature of the Buddhist way of life is the Eightfold Path, which the Buddha offered as a prescription for the elimination suffering, to eliminate suffering. So taken together, these represent the foundation of the Buddhist way of life. Many Buddhists, both monastics and lay people, practice meditation in a variety of forms. Some techniques such as Shamantha and Vipassana stress, the calm and stabilizing the mind, allowing one to watch its movements with a non-judging and detached attitude. Some are more complex, involving the contemplation of mandalas, recitation of mantras, and visualization of deities. Another Buddhist practice is pilgrimage to holy places, and especially places that, like the Buddha's birth, where his enlightenment came, his first sermon, and his death. And in many cases, your pilgrimage destination sites feature stupas that contain relics of the Buddha or of Buddhist saints. So perhaps the most popular of all of Buddhist practices is the observance of holidays and festivals. So the most important of these are Vesak, a celebration of the birth of the Buddha, and Asala, which commemorates the anniversary of the preaching of the Buddha's first sermon. So that's a wrap on Buddhism. Be sure to look at the accompanying readings in the on the course page under week 2. Okay, and I will talk to you next time, all right? Chapter 6.